The entry has been in the archive for 22 years. I know because I put it there. I was a junior intercept clerk in those days, and the object that appeared at the edge of the Tharoven cordon on the 14th day of the 6th watch cycle looked, on every instrument we had, like debris, a mass reading consistent with a derelict hull, no drive signature, no active emissions, no transponder reply. It had come to rest in a region of the intercept grid we called the fold, a gap between two sensor lattice nodes, wide enough for a small object to sit without triggering a continuous track alert, ping on a sweep pass and then go quiet before the next one. Debris, I logged it. Inactive derelict, probable salvage origin, mass approximately 1.4 million displacement units. I flagged it for monthly confirmation sweeps and moved on. The monthly sweeps confirmed it for 22 years. Every one of them. The object sat in the fold and did not move, and in time it acquired the status that all long-confirmed contacts acquire. Background, a fixture. Fleet Warden Doroth, my predecessor, firmed it 41 times. Fleet Warden Vel, the warden before that, confirmed it 63 times. I have confirmed it personally at least 200 times. I can recite its mass reading from memory. It has been as permanent a feature of the cordon's interior as the lattice nodes themselves. I was at the summation sweep console at 0312 this morning when the object moved. I want to be precise about that. I want the record to reflect what I actually observed because, in the 17 minutes that followed, I made 11 separate intercept decisions and every one of them was correct by the book, and not one of them was sufficient. The record should show that. Future signal wardens reading this log should understand that the failure, if it is a failure, was not in the decisions. The decisions were sound. They were simply late. And they were late because the thing that moved had already decided where it was going before I held this post. At 0312, the confirmation sweep showed a displacement of 40 meters from the previous logged coordinates. 40 meters, less than the diameter of a patrol cutter. I marked it as possible lattice node calibration drift and flagged it for technical review. Krux 3 Swansnex and the next sweep returned a displacement of 312 meters, same direction. I canceled the technical review flag and opened a live track channel. At 0319, the object was moving at 1/4 drive power, not accelerating, already there. Smoothly without the ramp that a hull reaching that velocity from rest would produce. My instruments had not detected the acceleration phase, because it had occurred between sweep intervals. What I could determine was that the hull was now on a bearing that would take it to the cordon's outer boundary in 44 minutes, through the gap between lattice nodes 7 and 9. That gap is 1,100 kilometers wide. It is in the technical survey as a known coverage limitation, pending a remediation node that has been in the budget proposal for 6 years without approval. The hull was bearing directly for it. I requested 2 patrol cutters to the projected intercept point. Intercept time, 37 minutes at standard speed. I flagged the contact as a live hull, identity unconfirmed, and pulled the archive entry. The archive returned in 11 seconds. A Terran hull. Hull designation consistent with the Terran Deep Survey Registry, an inventory class we have. Catalog entries for but no direct confirmation procedures for, because Terran Deep Survey hulls are not required by any treaty provision to identify themselves to cordon traffic management. They are not prohibited from operating inside the cordon. They are not prohibited from operating anywhere. There is no provision in the Tharoven Accord that required this hull to announce itself, respond to our swipes, or remain where it was. It had simply chosen to, for 22 years. At 331, the hull adjusted its bearing by 4 degrees. The new vector would take it through the gap between nodes 9 and 11 instead. My cutters were already committed to the nodes 7 to 9 corridor. Redirecting them would add 19 minutes. I redirected them and requested 2 additional cutters for the original vector in case the adjustment was a feint. At 0338, the hull adjusted again, 6 degrees, nodes 11 to 13. The cutters I had redirected at 0331 were behind the geometry now. I requested the entire first watch patrol complement, 14 cutters, and began plotting a net. At 0341, Signal Command Primus Aerith Sol arrived at my console. She looked at the board for a long time without speaking. Then she asked how long the contact had been on file. 22 years, I told her. She did not respond to that. The hull was not accelerating and not varying its speed. It was still at 1/4 drive power, moving with the unhurried deliberateness of a thing that had considered all available routes in advance and selected one that would be clear by the time it arrived. Each bearing adjustment was too small to trigger the automated pursuit vector response, and each one placed the hull a few degrees outside the closing edge of whatever net geometry I had just committed to. Not dramatically outside, just enough to be past the net when the net arrived. Primus Sol told me to open a hailing channel. I transmitted the standard transit inquiry, then the secondary hail in 7 languages, then the emergency halt order, which under Tharoven Signal Command Protocol has legal force for all vessels inside the cordon boundary, including foreign registry. I received no response to any of them. The hull was not jamming our signals. Our transmissions were going out, and as far as I could determine, being received. It simply had nothing to say to us, and the Accord did not require it to say anything. At 0349, Primus Sol requested armed intercept authorization from Fleet Sector. 17 minutes under standard protocol. The hull would reach the boundary in 23 minutes. I kept working the net. I ran projections. I covered 8 exit vectors. Each time I committed to a geometry, the bearing adjustment placed the hull 6 or 7 degrees outside the coverage edge. At 0353, I stopped moving the cutters. I want the record to note that I did not stop out of defeat. I stopped because continuing was consuming resources that could not be repositioned in time, and the result in every remaining projection was the same. A warden who has run 41 projections and received 41 identical answers is not making a decision. She is reading one. I stopped because I had run 41 projections in 22 minutes, and in every one of them, the hull's exit vector fell outside whatever net I assemble in time. The gaps in the lattice are documented. The coverage limitations are in the survey reports and the remediation queue. Under the Tharoven Accord's transparency provisions, the general structure of our cordon grid is available on request to any registered foreign registry, including the Terran Deep Survey. The hull had been sitting in the fold for 22 years because it was disabled or adrift or waiting for orders. It had been sitting there because that was how long it took to be certain. At 0403, the hull crossed the outer boundary through a gap between lattice nodes 22 and 23, a 600-kilometer corridor I had not covered because my net geometry had run out of cutters. It continued at 1/4 drive power until it was 17,000 kilometers beyond the boundary, at which point it went to full drive. The signature on my instruments was consistent with a hull of 4 million displacement units moving at a velocity no patrol asset I have could match. It is now in open space. The hailing channel is still open. I have filed intercept logs for 29 years. Everyone has a cause code: unauthorized transit, emergency crossing, transponder failure, treaty deviation. There is a cause code for every category of departure from the cordon's interior. I cannot find the cause code for this. The hull entered during my predecessor's watch. It sat for 22 years without moving, transmitting, asking for anything, threatening anything. When it decided to leave, it left. My cutters, my net, my protocols, my authority. None of it was sufficient to prevent a departure the hull had been planning since before I held this post. I am closing this log now. I am leaving the cause of departure field empty. What I know is this: the archive entry, hull designation Terran Deep Survey, Mass 1, 4 million displacement units, 22 years on file. I pulled it again after the hull crossed the boundary. The entry had been amended, not by Signal Command, not by our archive system. The amendment timestamp is 22 years old, filed the day the hull first appeared in the fold. The notation field, which I had left blank when I first logged the contact because I had nothing to put there, now contains 4 words in standard script. They read, "Thank you for the quiet. I am closing the log."